The conversation you are about to hear was recorded in 2020 during the height of the global pandemic. And now, Global Comedy Studios presents, Is This a Bad Time to Talk?
All right, I'm going to call Jordan Carlos, a very talented human being that I met years ago. And he taught at the Pit, he taught stand-up, but he's an accomplished stand-up. He's been on the Colbert Report. He wrote and was on the Larry Wilmore Show. And now I think he writes for BET.
Ali, how are
Hello,
you?
is it good? Is this Jordan Carlos?
The same. This is him. This is me.
Is this a bad time to talk?
The pandemic notwithstanding. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just worried about my young son who might go pow-pow in his pants at any moment. But you know what? I love stakes. Stakes are what makes life interesting. So let's see if we can. Yeah, let's see if we can do this, man.
You won't be alone. I mean, when I talked to Michael Shannon, his kids were yelling in the background, and they were saying goodbye. When I talked to Rachel Dratch, Eli was jumping in there and screaming about something. So
wow, I'm in good company.
I mean, Janine Garofalo, Kevin McDonald, Reed Birney.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, you're in. I mean, Joe Firestone. Yeah.
Why
yeah,
would Michael Shannon's children yell at him? Have they
No.
Michael Shannon?
They weren't yelling at him. They were saying goodbye. They were going out for a walk. So they were like saying goodbye. But, I mean, this thing for me is born out of the pandemic. At a certain point, I was like, oh, this is not going away, and I'm not making anything. And when this is done, if I don't have something to show for it, and I mean, I struggle with I got to have something. And I struggle with my own situational depression. And so, I could feel that it was coming on. Oh, by the way, I have to let you know, this phone call is being recorded. So are you cool with that? In New York City, you got to tell people.
See, this is what's gonna, you know what, and this is what, like you're almost like a customer service rep. I love it. I can't curse on the phone. That's gonna get me hung up on. I understand.
No, you can say whatever you want because first and foremost, it's a phone call. I'm using an old-fashioned handheld receiver plugged into my iPhone.
Wow.
And
where did you get that? That's amazing.
Well, years ago, I got one for a bit. I thought it'd be a funny bit. And, when I had money and you bought a lot of shiz on Amazon. That's what my daughters accuse me of. You buy so much shiz on Amazon, Daddy. I'm like, Daddy would rather have a bunch of little stuff than one big thing.
I like that.
And then,
I love that philosophy.
And, I like shiz. I like little fun tchotchkes and stuff. So I bought this thing, and it was in the drawer. And as I was walking around the spaces, I saw it again. And I was like, I want to do something with this. And I plugged it into my phone, and it seemed to work. And so I said, let me just see if people will return my call, and I can talk to them about, their different bifurcation points, when we met and then how they got to where they are. And I would just kind of listen, to a point where they may go, are you still there? And I'd say, I'm here to listen.
Well, I love that, and I love that you're listening on an old kind of like, I'm guessing, heavy plastic receiver. So that's really cool, man. Geez, when did we meet? We met so long. It was 2002, 2003, maybe? You have to be, I mean, when I got your message, I was like, of course, because not only, Ali, I mean, you're if you're willing to listen to this, you're an institution in New York comedy, right? And even when I asked if I could like do something inane or dumb on your stage, you were like, sure, absolutely, and you were so kind. And more than that, you'd written for SNL already, and I was like, well, wow, this guy. I can't believe it. Did he hear me right? He's letting me on stage. And you definitely were one of the first people to do that, and you've always been so kind about that. And I'll just never forget that about you. Not that you're leaving this earth, but anytime soon. But I just won't, I was like struck by that. And I have to say that you giving me an opportunity to get on stage definitely gave me confidence to do more. I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's true.
I thank you, my man. I mean, I didn't know it, but I thank you. You know, for me, it was always trying to be a symbiotic relationship. You know, I mean, people did it for me at Improv Olympic and Second City and UCB,
Sure.
and you know, so when we opened up the pit in September of 2002, the whole point of opening something like that is to offer people stage time, and hopefully other people get stage time and see shows, and you know, that was the goal. And I always liked you, and I always thought you were talented from the get-go. And I knew, I guess, at that point you were getting into stand-up to some degree in the first 5 years of it.
I was, because you know what? I had first trained in long form, and I trained in short form, and you know, I was like, I always wanted to try stand-up though, only because I wanted to see what that would be like. I'd grown up in the group dynamic, or you know, kind of like come up in the group dynamic of comedy, and but I hadn't seen with my own eyes, like, you know, for myself, what stand-up would be like. And I don't know, it's apples and oranges for me. I just tended to do it more because I don't know. It worked out as far as, like, work was concerned. You know, like, I'd work this day job. I used to work in advertising, so I'd write all day, and then I'd only have the time and energy, I remember, at the end of the day to maybe go do, like, a set or something like that, and then go home. So that was like what kind of like cemented it for me. So, and it was free, and the UCB cost money. So I was like, all right, I'll do stand up. So yeah, that was how you're making me remember. This is really hard to do. So I guess that's kind of how I first started out, but you always let me do the craziest, wackiest things. I remember that me and my friends, Victor Vernado and Roger Hales, we came to you with an idea. And the idea was, we'll just get up there and do stand-up, and we'll take suggestions from the audience. And we called it Flying Blind. And we definitely thought you were going to say no. And you're like, totally fine. Yeah, just go up and do it. It was the most grueling. It was such an ordeal, not only for us, but for the audience. I felt so bad for the audience, you know, to come up with jokes right there on the spot. But I learned from that, write things down, have prepared material, at least as far as I was concerned, and don't subject your friends to it until it's right. But I guess what really, I have you to thank, man. And then you let me write, or you let me do or teach a stand-up class, which I did, which was so fun, but it was the blind leading the blind. I had no business teaching that class, but I had a great time doing it, and you saved me because it was summertime. I was so broke, and you gave me the job, and it was like, I think it's worse being broke in the summer than it is in the winter if I had my druthers. So, it was just summer, sweltering heat, and I poured everything I could into the class, and people actually got a lot out of it. I think it was more or less just giving people, stage time and a voice, and you know, and giving them a space to kind of like fly. I'm not sure if anybody after that still. Actually, you know what? One guy, Jordan, another guy named Jordan. Keep it simple. He went on and he was like, he's got TV credits now. But he didn't need me. But he took the class anyway. So, I mean, that was like, I have you to thank for all that. Actually, you honestly kept my lights on for an entire summer. I don't know if you knew that or not. But these points were always like, I remember I was like, gonna give up, and because you hear so many no's, obviously, and then someone says sure, someone takes a chance on you, you know. Because I was hearing yes in so many other facets of my life, like in the 9-to-5 kind of workaday facet of my life of like advertising and things like that. I was raising in the ranks in that very quickly. But I didn't want to do that because I like to torture myself, I guess. So I just remember feeling like a failure in comedy, but good at the 9-to-5 stuff. And I wanted it to be the other way around, or at least, you know, I wanted to be good at comedy, and I didn't really want to worry about 9-to-5 so much. I wanted to be rewarded for comedy, but, you know, I was learning slowly but surely that art and commerce sometimes, don't meet, and that you have to not worry about that so much, or worry about what others are doing compared to what you're doing. So that was so for the first few years of comedy, I quit my job in 2005 after working for about 4 years in advertising. I saved up about $10,000 and went broke immediately. And yeah, man, I don't think I really got a job in comedy for another 6 years. But in between, I was doing commercials and stuff, which that would be something too. I'd knock it out of the park with commercials. I have 3 commercials, national commercials on at once, but it wasn't giving me any satisfaction because I wasn't on a television show and I wasn't touring doing stand-up, and I couldn't formulate an hour or even 7 minutes worth of stand-up. And then finally, I think once I got a part on a TV show, there was this MTV show with Doug Lyman called I Just Want My Pants Back, 2011. I started feeling better, and I was getting traction, and then we made 10 episodes, and then it got canceled, and I was gutted, man, gutted. And so I don't think my agents really knew what to do with me, and I just it's been my thing where most representation doesn't know what to do with me, so I have to figure it out for myself. So the next job I got in 2013 was working for Larry Wilmore, and I did that by stalking this guy who was his executive producer. And I stalked him to a panel discussion about the environment and the intersection of Hollywood and the environment with Norman Lear. And I was the only young person there. And I came loaded for bear with all these questions for the EP that somehow conjoined both entertainment and the environment. And I was please notice me, right? So afterwards, I hear you're starting the show at Larry Wilmore, and I was, by the way, pitted out, man. I was sweating profusely, and he was he was like, why don't you come to my office, right? And this is after so much. I had made packet after packet after writing packet, and maybe a nibble here, a nibble there, but I just I think I'm speaking in English. I think these are jokes. I think this is going well, but it was all rejection until this guy brought me to his office. And I don't know what it was like when you got the writing gig at SNL. You wrote for SNL, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Can I ask what it was like when you first got the job? Because that's all I ever really remember about getting gigs. It's how did I do that? I got to do that again,
Well, I mean, it was a dream come true, but it also took a long time, and I auditioned for the show as well on 8H. Wow. And then, after I auditioned, they were like, look, we're only going to hire one female performer this year. We're not even looking for any writers this year, but why don't you put together a packet? And, and Steve Higgins was instrumental in that. Wow. He works with Jimmy Fallon now on the Tonight Show. And so he championed me. We came and saw me at Second City ETC, not me, but he came and saw Second City, and I happened to be performing. And then we put together a packet of my writing, and they submitted that. And, then after that, they were like, look, we're going to hire Rachel Dratch, but we're going to create a job for you as a writer just to get you in-house. And I was like, great. But I still had to go meet and interview people. And then by the time it happened, it was it actually happened. And next thing you know, they're like, can you be here tomorrow? And this was a Sunday, and I was like, yeah. And I flew to New York and then started writing for the 25th anniversary season.
That's crazy, man. I mean, don't you ever feel like that is insane? This insane moment in your life, because that's how it felt to me. I don't know. Have you ever been that hungry again?
That was something when I liken it to. I saved up for 9 years to go to space camp. I put away all my nickels and pennies and dimes, and I saved up, and I wanted to go to space camp and just see what it was like. And I did, and I got to do it, and it was a dream come true. And I've got to say that us talking is because I got a job at SNL. It brought me to New York. It gave me the money to stay in New York. And then from that, everything else came. So that's why I, try to stay humble and hungry as I can, but I don't know if I'm really that hungry of a person, metaphorically, literally, I'm always pretty hungry. But, it was done for me. So I had gone from fraternity to...
for you?
Well, I'm saying
you did that.
IO. Yes, but Sharna gave me a place to play at IO. Second City gave me a place to play. UCB gave me a place to play when I got, when we started out in New York. So, yes, I did do it, but nothing I've ever accomplished I did by myself. So the stuff you're saying is, I don't think I ever would have heard it. I probably, hopefully, would have seen you again somewhere down the line here and there. But then I was, when I began this thing, I was just like, I'm going to look in through my phone and see who I want to talk to and who might talk to me and who I think is talented and a good person. And, some of the people I've talked to have already achieved a certain level of global success. But there's other folks like yourself who I think, you're just on the verge of, coming into your own in a way where people will know you, aside from having
you know
on
something?
TV.
Do you know something, Ellie?
What do I know?
That I don't. There's something around the corner from me.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But I think, from what we've talked, and we'll talk more about it, I think you're right there, Same thing when I talked to Joe Firestone. When I talked to Joe Firestone yesterday, I know Joe. I mean, Joe worked at, was an intern at the Pit and took classes there and did shows there and was very kind as well. But she's, again, somebody I think, it's just a matter of time for the right person with the ability to say, okay, and then the right vehicle. So.
That's so kind, man. That's really kind. I really appreciate that. I guess for me, it's like, and I don't mind it anymore. And by the way, that's the first time I've ever really told anybody about, like, how I stalked a dude and then got the gig, but that's usually how it goes for me. I mean, I think I used to want to be a rap executive, so I stalked this. I went to Russell Simmons' office when I was in college. Like, I would go down there. Like, I went to school in Rhode Island, but I went down there about 4 or 5 times and, like, hung out until they gave me an interview. And sometimes I wonder, do I still have that same, passion or hunger to get, to get where I want to go? And it'll still show up. I mean, or maybe maybe my worry is moot because I'm starting to get more traction. Like, I have a job now, and I don't know what I'm complaining about, but but it is one of those kind of things where, like, I just want to make sure that pilot light is still there. I hope, and I feel like you even doing this, wanting to create content and to create, makes me feel like for you that it's definitely still there, But I think all artists definitely feel that way, And if it goes out, that's our major worry, It's and this pandemic has not helped at all. I am a domestic. I'm doing laundry, cleaning, cooking, windows, the whole nine. If you want your apartment, man, or your house, I'm here. Done. No problem. You just got to leave.
I will. I'll ask my wife, see what she says. But it's interesting what you say. I mean, to me, right now, all this is a phone call to an old friend.
Right.
Because it's on my phone somewhere. It's in either Google Drive or Dropbox. Once I'm done, I put it there. But then I got to figure out how to cut it together, how to post it. So to me, it's more about making art than making content. Because Emily Dickinson wrote to keep the noose from around her neck and showed none of it to anybody, really, in her lifetime. But she did what she had to do to keep sane during her lifetime. So, I mean, for me, this is just, look, I mean, I sometimes I think if someone found my phone who was like a 14-year-old kid and was like, you had these people in your phone? They'd be like, why aren't you calling them?
Right.
So why don't you call and talk to them?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
and I,
yeah.
and I
like
did.
Me, do you feel like, well, I appreciate you doing that. I was like, you were like, I don't know if you remember me. I was like, dude, of course I remember you. Ali, like, you're one of the most memorable people I've met in New York City. You have the most fun name. Your name is a roller coaster of a name. It's wonderful. Have I not told you this enough? I'm sorry. I feel bad about that. It's a fantastic name. You have a fantastic. You're towering. You're 6'3". Are you 6'3"?
6'1", 6'2" with shoes.
I wish I were that tall. You know, I'm not that tall. I'm always like, oh, this guy has got it going on. You know, you were one of the first guys I was like, this guy has got it going on. You know, like you totally, you used your whole body when you expressed yourself. You were free in your body. I was like, I can't have that with this guy. But you know, and then you had your own theater, and then you expanded 24th Street. For me, I guess a phone call like this is like, it helps because it's like, I don't know, man. I just felt I've been taking so much for granted for so long, you know, and I can't believe I did that. I can't believe, you know, there were so many parties or get-togethers that me and my wife would be like poo-poo and not want to go to, and we're so sick of people, and then, you know what, we got our wish, right? So we can't see anybody, and now all we want to do is see people and talk to people and, you know, and communicate and really, I guess for me, this experience has definitely focused that lens, you know. But yeah, I have been writing for my job, but my job, I also think about it as, in a strange way, it's kept me sane, but it's also like I'm writing for a world that is definitely fantastical, because it's a world without COVID-19, even though it's set in quote-unquote reality, you know? And I don't know how I feel about that, but when I was a kid, I don't know if you watched this too. Did you ever watch Gomer Pyle?
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it. I'll tell you a Gomer Pyle story in a second.
I want to hear a Gomer Pyle story immediately. Please, go ahead. I want to hear that.
Well, there's a story about Andy Griffith. He goes into the executive's office. He put his feet on the table, and he said, you know what, I'm not going to walk out of here until we find Jim Nabors a vehicle. And that became Gomer Pyle.
Wow.
Yeah. But it took Andy Griffith to use his equity to say,
yeah,
hey, man, I've had my day in the sun with the Andy Griffith Show, and this kid is funny, and he deserves to have his own show.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought Gomer came first. I didn't know about the Andy Griffith Show when I was a kid. But you're right. The lending of the power in order to get somewhere, having a champion, like you said, with Higgins is so important. You're right. I mean, geez. I was just going to say that I want to return to that, but I was just going to say that when I was a kid, I watched Gomer Pyle religiously, loved it. But it took place during Vietnam, and Gomer never went to Vietnam, nor was there any talk of Vietnam at all, right? So I was always like, why is he in the military but not being shipped off to Southeast Asia? And I realized it was if people wanted to escape, so they were willing to deal with a show or watch a show, consume a show that was not grounded in reality. And now I find myself doing the exact same thing, and it's kind of strange to me. And it's not. I'm not at the point where I have choices, where I'm leaving the show unless we do COVID-19 material, But it did strike me, and then I said to myself, well, I guess I want to be in a position where I can make choices one day, so that I'm not kind of writing this fantastical stuff, because what we make and what we write is very influential, So people tend to love the idiot box, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but yeah, man. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, about power and persuasion. It's just that I've had a few people step in for me, and one of them was this guy Rory Albanese, who was the EP at the Nightly Show when it began in 2013. So he went to bat for me, and that's who I met, who I stalked. I went to his office. He talked nonstop for about an hour and a half. I thought I came prepared with all these notes, and he talked nonstop for an hour and a half. And I'd never experienced that. It's usually me having to convince somebody. Then I was like, I guess I get the job. I had no writing packet, no nothing like that. And then he's like, well, you got to meet Larry. Great. So we meet Larry Wilmore. I'm prepared for whatever Larry Wilmore has to say to me, and then I'm ready for all the questions. It's another hour and a half of this talking, right? So I was like, it's a lock. Now I definitely have the job. And then Larry, because Larry Wilmore, was like, maybe we could see a sample of your writing. And I was like, oh, yeah, right. I hadn't, all my packets at that point were garbage. So the only thing that went right for me at the time was stand-up. So I said, why don't you guys come to the stand-up show I'm doing? And they agreed. And in fact, it was they were like, they kind of pivoted and were like, actually, why don't you go to this? We're doing a stand-up showcase, Comedy Central, for everybody, for people that want to be on the show. But you want to write for the show, but just be on this showcase. So I do the showcase, and you've done showcases, and you know that they can be, industry showcases are brutal, right? So I did it, and I don't know what happened, but I blacked out, and it went really well. And I could see both Rory and Larry look at each other and nod in the darkness, like as I was performing. And then my life changed after that, Like I had to go someplace every day for 2 years after that. And I wrote, and it was fantastic. And after that, I was on for 2 seasons and of writing and performing, and that was cool. I was making money, and then that stopped. It's so strange. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's these kind of like, there's an old saying about like buying a boat, right? The best days are the days you buy it, and the day you sell it. So I sometimes feel that like my experiences are definitely bookended by getting the job and then the job ending, and I grapple with remembering the good times in between, because New York is so hard, and I've made a living here in comedy. It's brutal, it's just really brutal. But what I did one more time after it was all over was sat down, finally like knuckled up and kind of like wrote all the spec scripts and things like that I've been meaning to write for so long, and I hadn't been doing. And then I finally got a job writing for Sarah Jessica Parker in 2018 for her show Divorce. And then I got another job last year. Yeah, it's like it's tough, man. So I got a job last year, at the end of last year, writing for a show called First Wives Club on BET. But now, Ollie, I finally have like a body of work. You know what I mean? And it only took about 20 years, Ollie. That's all. I don't know.
I want to ask a few questions. I mean, because it's amazing to me that you somehow had the wherewithal to say, I need to go to see Rory Albanese do this talk, and you
right.
You knew to talk to him, and there's nothing wrong with that, to approach someone and say, hey, whatever you want to call it, stalking or not, but I mean, you're interested, you want to work, and then that leading to a meeting, and that meeting leading to having the wherewithal and the courage to say, why don't you guys come see me perform? That takes a certain amount of confidence and chutzpah, and then them saying, why don't you, come and perform here? And then to me, that moment, of looking out in the audience and seeing Larry Wilmore and Rory Albanese nod at each other, it's like almost like a Mr. Saturday Night type moment. It is a magical moment, It is. And to look out there in that night and see that, and then for that to lead to 2 years of work, and something like Larry Wilmore, I mean, it's a groundbreaking show. For him to be the anchor of a show like that, it will be looked back on as television history. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it was to be there in that moment when the wheel goes round it'll always be burned on my brain. And I feel like what I try to do now is like keep and hold on to things to help me remember them. Obviously, like I helped him write jokes for the 2016 White House Correspondents' Dinner when I used to do that. And that was fantastic, and just all the guests that we had. He had Bernie Sanders on, who at the time basically, and I don't think anyone ever noticed it, but Bernie kind of announced on our show that he was running for president, and it's anybody did it in the most kind of timid way. He's like, yeah, I might, like you said, after this I might get a bite. I don't know, So it was we're like, did you just say you're running for president? But to be there in that moment in the studio when he said that, which take it or leave it. I don't know how people that listen to this, how they feel about Bernie Sanders, but when someone announces that they're running for president and it makes waves like that, it's really something. It stays with you. The moment definitely stays with you. So I can say that I was there for that, and I never had any connections or anything like that. And I just never had any connections in the industry. I just kind of I would have loved to have been born somebody's child. It was some big producer's child, but that just, it doesn't happen for a lot of people, but it didn't happen for me. And I was always like, oh man, if I could, if that were the case, it'd be so much easier. But I've kind of found ways around and workarounds to make a good living here and to stay in the city, which I love this place. And, I don't want to leave, even though people are definitely evacuating. So I don't know, man. Are you still in New York?
Yeah, right now I'm still in New York. But, I also I opened up a comedy theater in Chapel Hill, North Carolina in 2017. Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, I don't know what I'll be able to hold on to when the smoke settles in 6 months. But, what's interesting, that 2016 Correspondents' Dinner, is, historic in many ways. Larry Wilmore hosting African American president, correct? That last moment there, when Larry decided to use the N-word with President Obama, was that something that was controversial in the moment? When it happened, I was like, oh my God, But was it something that was thought about, talked about? Did the president know it was happening? Because in a way, that is a monumental moment, to me in American history.
For sure.
What was that like? To be at that Correspondents' Dinner and then the decision to be like, we're going to do it, we're going to say it, we're going to have this be the closing line.
Well, first, let me say I wasn't there, but I did give the jokes, and I was watching. I remember him, saying when he practiced in front of us, and I remember him. I think I do recall him saying, the N-word, NASCAR. And we were like, I was like, if you say it right, if you have the room and you say it right, that's one thing. But it's a tough room. And I remember being in the moment before he did it uneasy about it. I was like, this crowd, they're stuck up. It's DC. Everybody's like, DC people are a little PC. It's not New York City where you can kind of, get away with that if people are drinking and having fun and there's frivolity, then maybe. But I was in the camp that I wasn't going to bet against my boss or short my boss. I was like, you can get away with it. And it made for, I think no one else noticed anything else he said except for that one thing. And I was like, well, on one hand, he spoke the truth. And on the other hand, it's just, comedy is about, as you know, it's the fool tells the king the truth, and if he can keep his head, then he can keep his job, So, I don't know, man. I'm still to this day torn about it. And I think that in the room, everybody had that spidey sense that this might be a problem. Now, April Ryan, the reporter who I like April Ryan a lot, and April Ryan spoke. She's in the White House press pool. She's often, she took issue with it. She's often like, pilloried by the right and by Trump and everything like that. And, she stuck up for, I guess, the respectability politics of it all, that we as a people don't say the N-word in front of mixed company, right? So if it were like an all-black audience, that'd be one thing. But it was not. So I think that was the big and major issue. And it's an old school stance, but one that has definite merit. And on the other hand, maybe he's like the Chuck Yeager of it all. Maybe he broke the sound barrier and it's been done. You know what I mean? Like, there's no crying over the spilled milk, So,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, I wouldn't have done it, but he did it. And that's maybe speaking of daring, he's a daring guy, So there you have it,
You mentioned Doug Liman that you'd worked with in Can I Get My Pants Back? Now, is that the same Doug Liman who did Suits?
Same one.
It's funny. I played cards with Doug Lyman.
Shut up. Are you serious?
I think he's amazing. Yeah. I mean, he's friends with John Hamburg, who I know through cards, who did, the Fockers movies, and John and I are friendly. And Doug used to come and play cards with us, and just, one of those, like, geniuses. Like, he's sitting there playing cards, but you're like, this guy, the amount of content he's made, and there's a certain gift to being able to churn out content that's just good, solid content. And be able to get it made and be a producer and look at a script and put together a team. So, Doug Lyman's also someone who I'm intrigued by.
You played cards with him?
Yeah. When I played cards, we used to have a game in the BC world before Corona, and Doug would come sometime when he was in town, and when John Hamburg was living in New York, and now he lives in Los Angeles. When you look back on the landscape, what's that? No, go ahead.
I was going to say this, that I've played cards with Doug Lyman. That is his beautiful apartment, and this is why I'm always trying, and I don't know how to play cards, Ali, but I didn't let that stop me. So somebody was like, "Oh, we're playing cards with Doug Lyman. You should come." So this friend of mine was like, "You should go." So I was like, you can meet Doug Lyman. So I was like, "All right, I don't know how to play poker," and he's like, "Well, just fucking learn," So I crammed, and then I went, and I remember I was the first one to arrive, of course, because I was eager and I wanted a job, And I walk in. Did you ever go to his place?
Yeah, I think he was in the process. When I went, he had just purchased it or was starting to work on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a beautiful place, right? Through the elevator door that opens up right into the apartment. So
yeah.
I walk in. He has a big dog. The dog's butt is shaved. I find this to be funny. I tell him, that's funny that your dog's butt is shaved. He tells me then that these are our first words. He's like, my dog has cancer. And I was like, oh my God. I'm not getting this job. Whatever the job is, I'm not getting the job.
Now, did you know him beforehand or no?
I had never met the man.
You went there to play cards by chance. Someone invited you.
By chance, someone invited me. I go, I fuck up immediately upon entry. Just nervous, and I say that dumb thing, and I was like, well, this is blown. And he's like, and we sit in silence for 20 minutes until the next person comes on. And finally people start coming in, to the apartment, and we start the game. And there's different tables at the card game. Doug happens to be at my table. And he notices me messing up a lot, and he's like, do you know how to play cards? And I was like, not really. He's like, why did you come here? And I was like, I'm sorry, I'll go, right? He's like, forget it, just stay, because we're playing for money. So he's going to take my money. And I quickly run, because I'm an out-of-work actor, I quickly run out of money. And he's like, are you out of money? And I was like, yeah, can I go to the ATM? And he's like, sure, man. So I go to the ATM, and this is during the time of man purses, so I leave my man purse down in his door, so he doesn't have to buzz me back in. I didn't want to upset him. Down at his front door of this building. One bank, the Santander Bank was whatever it's called, was the ATM was out of whack. I had to go to another ATM 4 blocks away. I come back, Doug Liman's holding my man purse in the entrance of his building. I was like, what am I doing? It was like the worst, it was just a horrible date gone wrong. So he's like, just come back upstairs. Take this fucking man purse. Come back upstairs. So I go upstairs, and I begin to get beginner's luck. I don't know what's happening, but it's working, and I knock Doug Liman out of his own poker tournament. I don't know how they were like, go all in, so I put everything in, whatever, the deed to my house, my car keys, and I knock him out. And he just went to his beautiful kitchen and started making pizza for the rest of the night. And I left shortly after with a couple more bucks in my pocket, but no job. 5 years, a couple of years later, 5 years later, they're doing this show that they're holding auditions for this show that I want to be on MTV. It's Doug Liman, and the final stage of it, the test, as you know. I come in the room, I meet Doug. He looks at me quizzically, and he goes, "Were you in my apartment about 5 years ago?" and I had to, at this poker thing, and I was like, so I had to lie, and I was like, well, Doug, there's a room full of people, a test, room full of people. So I said, well, Doug, not all black people look alike. And then he was so embarrassed, and then I got the job.
Wow. When you look back at the landscape of your life, right?
Yes,
are there places along the way where you knew, like, I want to perform, and were there places along the way where there was a class or a play or a teacher who championed you?
Yes.
Growing up, are those some moments you can talk about of, like, I knew I wanted to do it when I did this one line in the kindergarten play or something like that?
Sure. I mean, I think everybody has that, like everybody has that moment when they say, actually, I'm not bad at this and I want to keep going at it. My first art teacher ever, Miss Grubin, was fantastic, God rest her. And she championed me. She was my harshest critic, and she challenged me to create and to make and to pour myself into everything I did. But then also, if you do something great, do it again. That's what she was always like, do it again, do it again, do it again. Don't just rest on the laurels if you did one great painting or one great drawing, but like have a series of them, because time is limited, and you want to use your artistry and make a bunch of beautiful things. So she was helpful. She was my art teacher all from the 5th grade to the 12th grade. I mean, I had one art teacher from the 5th grade to the 12th grade, which is nuts, for somebody to see you develop and change like that. And she forever is imprinted in my mind. And when I think of sometimes giving up, I think, would Miss Grubin like that? She always knew you were talented. Would you be disappointing her? And I think her memory has always given me the encouragement to keep going. And because I'm not from here, I'm from Texas, and it's hard to sometimes, like, find your orientation or check in when you're not from New York. Even though it's my adoptive city, it's not where my roots are. So there's always the exit right there, and I think she was instrumental. Another class that I took, I actually took like a class with Robert McKee, which was fantastic. He was so kind to me, and I read his book and seen adaptation, and it was the first time I'd ever had like a screenwriting class that was like it was so beneficial and instrumental in me, like learning how to write scenes and learning how to write dialogue, and I think it's funny. All it takes is one or two, things like that, one or two teachers to keep you going and keep you motivated, So after McKee, I was inspired, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to make stories. I want to make people laugh. I love television movies so much that I want to like be inspired to I don't know, keep that ball aloft of like storytelling and comedy and keep doing it, man.
Wow. And then what did that end up leading you to Brown? And did you do stuff at Brown in this field?
So I got into Brown from the art. So I was painting, and my art teacher, Miss Grubin, got me into Brown, basically, And when I was at Brown and I was painting, I was like, I remember seeing the improv comedy troupe and just being blown away. And painting is wonderful, but it's so isolating, So I'd be in the studio by myself, and I'd be playing like old Steve Martin albums and like old or like Bill Cosby albums, but like stand-up albums, And then I when I saw the improv troupe, and the same improv troupe had like Tracy Ellis Ross in it, and who else? So many funny folks. TJ Nash, Michael. Was Michael Ian Black in that one? I think Michael Ian Black was in the improv troupe as well at Brown, but it had all these big talents that had come out of it. So it was very intimidating, but I wanted to be in it. Like John Krasinski was in it. So I wanted to be we went to school actually together, and I'd seen it, and I was like, I want to do this, So I auditioned for it and got it my first time out, which was crazy because I didn't really understand what I was doing. But once I, became a part of the team and the group and learned about long form and learned about short form and just got really kind of dyed in the wool, I was, I've been stung. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted was comedy after that,
And what was the name of that group at Brown?
In Providence.
In Providence.
In Providence, yeah. Yeah. And so afterward, I it stuck with me, and I wanted to kind of like merge. I wanted to write. I wanted to create, but I wanted to also I wanted to write things down too. And I found, and this is not a knock against improv. I don't want to knock that, and I hate when there's always the kind of the sharks and jets of stand up versus improv. I hate that because I've actually had the experience of doing both, and I love both forms. But it was only that I wasn't writing down stuff, And so I wanted to write things down, and I loved movies and television, and that's, I think, having the visual background of the painting and being able to tell stories through images, and then also learning about scene in improv, it just was like, it kind of came together as like a beautiful, like alchemy, that of course this is what film is, and that's what television is. So it's definitely, those two elements together have definitely like found their way into my writing. I always start very, very visually, and I love to tell a great visual story,
And then what led you from Brown to go to New York City, and how did you get into advertising?
That's a good question. I didn't really know. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get there, I mean, I thought what I wanted to do. My first summer was I interned for Russell Simmons at his clothing line called Fat Farm because I couldn't get a job at Def Jam, so they offered me Fat Farm. So I did that, and that was fantastic. It was I could write a whole film about that. That was I mean, I was 19 and going to all these nightclubs, and it was a mess. But and then the next summer I interned for the Upright Citizens Brigade. I was on their show. So, which is crazy because to this day, Amy Poehler, who's the sweetest, kindest person, still remembers me and knows. Like the last time I saw her, which was years ago, she was like, "Oh, Jordan, how you doing?" You know, and the time before that I had seen her was when I was an intern on the Upright Citizens Brigade. You know, and we were painting sets. We were just going around like crazy people. I was a PA on that. It was the best summer ever. I loved it. And I remember them giving me a choice. They said, all right, you can either work for this show, the Upright Citizens Brigade, which I loved, or you can work for this other show. They got a new host. It's called The Daily Show. And I was like, whoa, I don't think that show's going anywhere. So I did Upright Citizens Brigade instead. But I loved it. Loved it. So there was that. And then the summer after that, I started, I worked for, I worked for this advertising agency called McCann Erickson, and they were paying me bundles of money compared to what I was making at Comedy Central, and you know, Russell Simmons paid me $5 a day. So I was like, advertising, got it. And then I stayed in touch with the lady that hired me and for the advertising internship, and she offered me a job after school, which was like unheard of at the time, you know. So I really was about to stay in advertising, really was, because I was making good money, you know. I mean, I hate to whatever. I was making 35, which in 2001 was like, that was crazy. It was crazy money. And then this kid came along one day and was like, he was interviewing for a job at the ad agency, and this is the first time I'd ever met anybody who did this. He put his feet on the desk. And said, I won't work at this company for $100,000, for less than $100,000. They said, all right, fine, 75. They're like, pick the person that you want to work with. He just pointed to me. I don't know why, but he pointed to me, and that's how I got this monster raise in New York City. And then I moved to the Village, and I thought that, you know, that was why it was so hard for me to leave that job, was because I was 23 years old, making $75,000 a year in the Village in 2002. That's, I mean, to me, it's bananas, you know. So, but I wanted to follow the art, and I wanted to do, you know, I when I look back and I keep in touch with people in advertising, I feel like it's a lot of people that were very, very. You want to watch something else? You got it, buddy. That were very, very creative, but kind of just stayed on that boat, you know, and never jumped over. And sometimes, I don't know.
You still had to put together a portfolio, though. In the ad world, you still got to put together a packet, right?
Quite right, sir. Quite right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was similarly trying to get into advertising in Chicago before I started doing improv.
Really? Oh, really?
Yeah. So I had an ad portfolio. I took classes, everything.
Oh man, were you were you into copywriting, or were you more into the art direction of it all?
Copywriting. So I came up with, basic images and then the words to go with those images. And I still have that ad portfolio somewhere, but it was one of those crossroads moments where I was right about to quit doing improv, and then Sharna put me on a team at I.O., and then I never looked back. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's one of those things, and a lot of people in comedy started off that way, right? Like Jim Gaffigan was in advertising. I believe that Dick Cavett was in advertising. William Goldman was in advertising. So, you know, I think it's a good place to start, but because it teaches you to write for deadline. It teaches you a lot about rejection, and it teaches you a lot about output, and it keeps the bills paid. But in ways, I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but it can trap you, you know, and like you just want to, if you truly want to move on, it gets harder and harder the further along you get in the industry. So, but that's crazy, man. Yeah, you were into it too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, not as deep as you were. I never got a job because I put together a portfolio. I was ready to start interviewing, and then IO happened, and then I knew I had to give this a go for a while.
So how old were you when you got IO?
IO, I probably got that, when I was in 22. I probably showed up in Chicago when I was 21, and then I went to Chicago November 1st, 90 to start taking writing classes from a gentleman named Michael McCarthy, passed away a few weeks ago, rest in peace. But he taught a writing for SNL class, and that was the only thing like it in the country, and it was at Second City, so I signed up, and I went there with a bag of clothes and a computer November 1st, 90 to start taking that class. And then 9 years later, I got to be that, SNL writer.
That's awesome, man. So tell me something.
Yes, sir.
Please, go ahead. Tell me, or ask me, please. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to get into a little bit of those first open mics and how that happens, where you're doing improv, you're in the world of advertising, and then you start doing open mics in stand-up and realizing, oh, okay.
Well, first I didn't know about open mics. I just assumed that you just, there was some cigar chomping booker that looked you up and down and was like, I'm going to give this kid a chance, but that is not the case. So I had to learn about it, and I was into it, but I was burning my candle at both ends. So I was I think I was fortunate in the types of open mics that were available when I started, right? Because they weren't like the typical ones that you find today, which are the back rooms of bars, and the comedians it's just all comedians, and it can be glaringly misogynist or, just all dudes, and maybe the sprinkling of women here and there. But the ones that I went to that were available at the time were different. They were in the East Village, and the East Village was still, it was mostly artists, right? So that was crazy. You had Face Boy's open mic, which I'm sure do you remember Face Boy?
Mm-hmm,
he was like, Face Boy and Reverend Jen. So it was Face Boy and Reverend Jen.
Surf Reality.
Surf Reality, exactly.
Right.
So that was my, that's what an open mic was to me. It was, John King spouting about poetry and sometimes, coming unhinged a little, and then a woman named Domino who would play her 3-string guitar, and then Christian Finnegan getting up and doing brilliantly, and then the comedians were peppered very lightly in between, and you felt like you were an artist among these other artists. It wasn't like it is now. It was different, and it really gave you an appreciation for entertaining people because they talked back. I know that now we say, now in open mics, it's like everyone's silent and, they're just looking down at their joke. But these people would talk back to you, and they were talking back to you from perspectives, man, that I just, they were totally alien to me. And if I wanted to get up, guess what? This is what opportunity looked like. And honestly, now that I think about it, I'm so happy that that's what the open mics were when I first started. They changed, of course, because these scenes went away. Whether it was like Bowery Poetry Club or Surf Reality, they faded away. These I mean, I don't want to ramble on about gentrification, but the times change, and so does the look of things, and it became, open mics, for me at least, became a lot more, the more that was just comics, the darker it became. And I definitely battled a lot of dark thoughts and depression when I was doing open mics, and I did them longer than I should have, and which ate away at a lot of my confidence. So I kind of feel that I had to cut a lot of that loose, of if I can't make them laugh at an open mic, how can I make them laugh at a comedy club? And if the joke doesn't work at an open mic, how will it possibly work at a comedy club? When I wasn't even thinking about the notion that people at a comedy club are there to laugh and are drinking and have paid a lot and actually maybe are a little happier than the people in the audience at an open mic. I didn't even think of it from that perspective, and that's been like, for me, has been when I just started doing more stand-up in clubs, it changed my point of view on that. That maybe I'd grown past open mics, and it's very hard for me to say things like that. I guess I kind of come from a generation that, yes, we take risks. I'm the tail end of Gen X, so it's like we take risks, but we always feel, I don't know if you feel this way too, but I always feel that, like, you know what, man, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy, but I'm prepared if you need me, wherein I feel like millennials and Gen Z are like, fuck it, I got this, but haven't always done the kind of like preparation to get to assume the stage, So, I did open mics way too long. Did you ever do stand-up open mics at all?
Yeah, I mean, I still, will do stand-up. I've probably done stand-up, 250 times, but,
yeah.
For me, it was one of those things. I was talking to Rich Fulcher. I don't know if you know him, but yesterday
of course,
he's on the Mighty Boosh, and he and I came up together. And even in Chicago, it was tribal in terms of Annoyance, I.O., and Second City, So it was even more tribal in terms of stand-up versus improviser, which I think was a shame back then, because I think to some degree I'm probably better suited to the stand-up world, but I put my ladder against the improv building and climbed it as high as you could, and I probably should have been climbing the stand-up building, but I still enjoy doing it, and I still keep a Google Doc on my phone that's like stand-up ideas. I keep a Google Doc of sketch ideas, a Google Doc of songs that came to me, because I think that's, these glass teats, the light box phones, they can be toys or tools. But if you try to use the tool aspect of them, it's as good as a journal. It's as good as, a video camera was when I was a kid. So I think you just got to, and I, try to impart to my daughters, it can either be a tool or a toy. It depends how you use it. But ultimately, like without this tool, it would be, how would I talk to someone on the phone like you and be able to get a recording, it's, and I think something like this is born out of the pandemic, because in the BC world before Corona, I would have always loved to have talked to you and, hang out with you, because I enjoy your mind and your company, but I would have wanted to do it at Simple Studios with the right sound system, and I'll ask you what do you want to eat and drink, and I make sure it was like all perfect. Like with Janine, I always in the BC world with Janine Garofalo was like, I'd love to just sit down and talk to you. She was like, yeah, anytime, just call me. You got my number. And I just kept putting it off because I wanted it to be just so. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. If I was going to ask Janine for her time to come, I wanted to do it where it's like, it's just crisp, right? And I never did it. And then the virus happened. And then I was like, well, there's nothing to lose now. And once I started talking to some folks, then I realized, okay, when you listen to them, it's almost more intimate, because you're basically eavesdropping in on a phone conversation.
Yeah.
So it's a different quality.
But do you feel that after this, will there be will we forget, will there be a mass, like, forgetting of this moment, this, will people want, or will they want their concerts all the more? I don't know. I wonder about that, and I like what you're doing. Don't get me wrong. I wonder if, like, once people no longer are deprived of certain, comforts, or are we going to start, getting back to the kind of individualism and self-absorption, or like, I'm not saying for you, I'm saying in general, I need things just so in order to do this, is comfort going to be put at a premium once again, or put center stage once again,
Well, I mean, for me, I something caused the genesis of this to begin, and I think to some degree it was the yes and of Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall. Because if he'd said no, I might have stopped doing it. But then I asked, Fred Weller, my friend, who I've known since college, and I asked Reed Birney, and I began to get some traction. So once I did it, I was like, oh, I like doing this regardless of if it's actually recording. I hope it is, because I remember I used to like to listen to Larry King when I was younger in high school, and I found him on my clock radio, and I found out it had a radio aspect to it. So, and again, for me, I don't think this moment is going to be over for years, because in terms of the evictions that are going to come in residential and commercial real estate, for me, my goals have shifted since the virus began in the early days of the virus to, okay, this will be okay, to now I'm like, if I can save the original pit, I will be happy. Because it's just a matter of landlords didn't get the memo of we're all in this together. So they are brainwashed marrow deep that rent is never forgiven. And for whatever reason, no politician has come out, whether it be Cuomo or Trump or de Blasio, to say, hey, we're not talking about postponing rent, because all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. If I don't have it now, how am I going to have it then? And why should I pay you if I can't make rent? So it'll be, to me, it'll be interesting. But I don't think, like I said, I wouldn't have done this in a BC world. And it wouldn't have been because of, not wanting to do it, but not wanting to bother people,
But you've been haven't you been stressed out by, it feels like, okay, I only knew of 2 of the theaters that you ran, but I was like, Ollie must be doing so much all the time, and to know that you have another one in Chapel Hill, it's and to go from going at 100 miles an hour to 0, I think also there's the deceleration of it all is also, that's also nerve-wracking as well, and I mean, I don't know how you do it, I don't know, have you I don't know what that process. I'm sorry, I'm asking you questions. I know you're interviewing me, but I'm more like, I hope you understand that I've always just respected you, man, and looked up to you. So that's why I'm asking you things like this, and I do admire, from your voice, it sounds like you're calm about it, and you've made your bones about it. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, it's ever evolving, but I mean, again, I thank you for everything you say, and I appreciate it. That's why I'm trying to truly listen and take it in and appreciate it, because a lot of times we will dismiss, genuine notes of gratitude in our lives. But the things I did because, I wanted to have a yellow cab, and the Medallion, I wanted to drive it now and again, but I was happy for other people to drive it when I wasn't driving it. So I created a space where I could teach and perform, not by myself, but so that, other people could share in this thing as well, because I like people. I like talking to people. I like, the journey. And, so we had grown to 5 spaces, 4 in New York and 1 in Chapel Hill. And to some degree, I'd become a property manager, where I was just overseeing properties and HVAC and, payroll, and it just grown to that point. And I liken it to the story of the frog that you throw in boiling water and it jumps out. You put it in warm water and turn it up to boiling, and it stays there until it dies. I don't know if I would have ever let go of these spaces until they became untenable. So this time out by Mother Nature has kind of put me at a place of, base camp Nepal, where you acclimate before you take the next leg up to try to ascend Everest. And I'm like, well, what do I really want to do? I mean, I like talking to people, I like photography, I like writing, I like creating stories, I like, so it's given me a chance, and don't get me wrong, because our life was built around what I did for my wife and daughters. So I don't know what the future holds there, but I remind myself that I'm one of the lucky ones. I can still take a deep breath, We still have a place to live, you know, there's still some money, you know, and with these things, it did, I wouldn't even say it screeched from 100 miles an hour to zero, because there's still fits and bursts of trying to get loans, figure out what to do with those loans. You still got Con Edison and Verizon and insurance companies. Every month they send you a bill. And every month the landlord still sends you a bill every month. You still get a bill. And so, you know, I think there's something to being in the inside of this, you know, in the middle, to be able to have to bear witness, to be like, no, I'm this is where I am, so I have to do something out of it to be able to say, no, this isn't right on a lot of levels. But like I said, I wouldn't have got a chance to, I know I wouldn't have talked to you and the people I've talked to if life had just kind of kept going along. You know.
Yeah.
You know, and why I'm doing this to some degree is so that the young Jordan Carlos, everything I do for one person. I just don't know who that one person is. So when I ultimately figure this out and I post it right somewhere, however I figure out how to do it, and someone's like, "Oh my God, Jordan Carlos," and they listen to it, the Jordan Carlos in high school or college may benefit from it, or wherever, doesn't have to be high school or college. And hearing what you have to say, and, you know, all of these things are panning for gold. So one thing you said may cause someone to go, oh, yeah, I needed to hear that right now.
Yeah, I hear that, man. That's wow. And that's wonderful to be doing this. You know, most people are just hunkering down and, you know, counting their inventory and stock goods and things like that. But this is super helpful. It's helpful to me for sure. You know, I don't talk to a lot of adults right now, so, and I've almost I've almost forgotten a little bit how to communicate. I feel like, because I just have my routine with my family, and you know, we keep to ourselves, and it as someone who for a living, you know, communicates, and all the stand up is like, hey, has this ever happened to you? Or, all those sayings and stand up it comes from a point of the fact that comedians want to be understood, right? And you want to communicate, and that's what most of comedy is about. So, yeah, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to do that, man.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's symbiotic, because I still have, you know, like, to me, it's interesting that at some point you were like, I need to start writing spec scripts. And so you just hunkered down, you took the resources that you had, the block of time with the revenues that you'd made, and you sat down and you put your head to the grindstone, and you started writing spec scripts that led you to getting a job on Divorce with Sarah Jessica Parker. How did that go about, where you're like, all right, I'm just going to, how did you know how to do it? What research did you do? Did you look at other, dramedy type spec scripts?
Well, okay, so yeah, I looked at, excuse me, I liked the show a lot, and I'd looked at other spec scripts of that variety, things like Happy-ish, and I believe there was another, I was trying to think of some others, but I knew that I had to go opposite of like things like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I absolutely adore, but there has to be some gravitas, and I think the British are very good at it. So they create what you call sadcoms, so like Fleabag, etc. So I was looking at things like that, right, where broken people saying funny things, and we're okay with them being broken, and they don't have to be fixed by the end of the season. So I was looking at work like that, the original, like the British Office, things like that, and I looked at a book called Elephant Bucks, which was written by Blake Snyder's best friend, but it's called, I'll repeat it, it's called Elephant Bucks. I can't remember the author's name right now.
Elephant Bucks, B-U-C-K-S?
Like the animal, elephant, and then bucks, like money. So I read and reread that, and then what happened was I just wrote one spec after another, and I finally was writing about my family. My family is pretty basic. I love my family. There's nothing funny that happens to my family, so I just wrote about my wife's family, which is wacky. So that once I started writing about my wife's family, people were like, "Oh my God, this is great," you know. So they started paying attention, and I just once again I stalked these guys, Craig Thomas and Carter Bays, and they created How I Met Your Mother, and I got invited to a party. It was like at a bar, and I started I started up a conversation with them. It turns out they're the loveliest, sweetest people, very easy to talk to, and they were just why wouldn't you? You know, the 9 seasons of How I Met Your Mother, so why would they be unhappy? And this is right around that time that show ended, and at the party, I just remember meeting someone, and her name was Caroline Moore, and she worked for Pretty Matches, and Pretty Matches makes divorce. So she said, well, if you ever want to get a coffee sometime, let's do it. Now, at this point, I'm like, this is after the nightly show, and like I said, I was starting to get a little more like, how am I going to restart this engine, and I got the card, I sat on it for a while, and I was like, fuck it, call her. So I call her, go to her office, we have a great meeting. She's like, I'd love to read anything you have. Now, I've never been able to have somebody read what I write and then be like, I would hire you to do this for money, So I took a chance, and she read it, and she liked it, and she sent it to the showrunner, Liz Chillo, and then Liz and I had a coffee together, and she said, I really like you. At the time as I live here now, I live in Bay Ridge. Liz is from Bay Ridge, so we talked about Bay Ridge. And she said, I just want you to know you're the only black person in this writer's room. Just want you to know that. And I was like, oh, God. It's like I'd gone from the nightly show where, I was basically, it's like this multi-culti paradise to this. And I was like, Huggies cost money. So I took the job, and it was great. It was great to get the job. And it was a good job. But then the job ended. So I was like, well, it almost feels like sometimes like a fluke if you do it once, right? And I wanted to do it again. So I did this weird thing where two writing jobs in a row, and this had happened also on Divorce. I auditioned for a part, didn't get it, but then ended up writing for the show. Same thing happened with you and SNL. So I wrote for, and then I auditioned for a show called First Wives Club, which is a remake of the Bette Midler movie from the 90s. So I made it to the tests. It was between me and this other guy, Ron Rico. Ron Rico's a very funny guy. Ron Rico got the part. But I didn't I wrote the showrunner, Tracy Oliver, and was like, thank you so much for the opportunity. And, I'm a writer. If you ever need help writing this, I'm around. She writes me back, well, thank you for those kind words and da-da-da. If we ever need you, we'll let you know. Then I get this call, and she's like, listen, can you do a punch-up pass on the script? This is months later when they're in production. And I was like, absolutely. So I do the punch-up, send it back to her ASAP. She's like, thank you, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. So then a year passes, and I write her, and I'm like, hey, if you need help with season 2, just let me know. She's like, we probably don't, but thank you so much. And, I'm like, how do I get a job? How do I get a job? Please, God, let me get a job, And then one day I got this other writing job for a Quibi show. I just happened, my friend was like, had mercy on me, and she just gave me a job. And I was like, thank God. And then this lady, Tracy Oliver, calls, and she's like, listen, do you want to be a writer for the second season of First Wives Club? Something opened up, and I thought of you. So then I was like, absolutely. And then she said, you're going to be the only guy. And I was like, oh my God. So I go from being the only black guy to being the only man in the room, which was an experience. But and I'm glad I did it. But I have nothing bad to say about it. the crazy part was that I had to tell my friend who'd taken pity on me that I want, because it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write for a sitcom, that I wanted this sitcom job. Now here's the hard part, Ali. I tell my manager about the offer that I gotten. He tells me I shouldn't take the job. So for an hour and a half, I'm screaming at my manager to let me take this job. I'd gotten booked in Home Alone the reboot, and he's like, don't do this, blah 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 blah, right? And I was like, I want this, I need this, this is what I want to do. And then the pandemic hit. The movie got put on ice. Pilot season went away. I forgot to say he also wanted me available for pilot season. And this job I've had through these tumultuous times. So I don't know, man. That's how both those jobs took place. But a lot of it is blood, sweat, and anger, which is funny because it's comedy, But I'm sure you found that there's a lot of drama in comedy, huh?
Yeah. But I want to ask a couple of questions off of what you said, just for the folks who I think, because you said something, where I think you said something along the lines of, I just started pumping out spec scripts. Mm-hmm. But I think people are always kind of wondering, like, but how? Did you sit down at 9 o'clock? Did you make a cup of coffee? Have you ever read the book Rituals?
No, I've heard of the book Rituals, but never read it.
It's basically, the gist of it is it goes through the different rituals and process of successful writers and artists and painters, like Maya Angelou, what she did every day throughout her life, what Picasso did. So I think to me, it's always something interesting is what people's rituals are to go from, I need to write a spec script, and then I was just pumping out spec scripts. Would you wake up at a certain time? How many hours would you sit there at the computer?
So what I usually do is I wake up in the morning, and I when I'm writing specs, and I go running. So I run for a couple miles, and then I sit down. And this is before everybody's woken up. So at about 5:30 or 6, and if I can just get an hour of writing in, of just of banging it out before everybody wakes up, then I'm so happy, And I think bird's eye view is this. I've been very fortunate that I've had them, gotten jobs so that I can then write more and to get to the next thing. Because somebody said they said it a lot cooler than I ever will, but they were like, time is money, but money is also time. So it's like that you're buying the time with the money that you make, and you can invest that in yourself. So that's what I've kind of tried to do is I've noticed whenever I exercise, get up early, focus, I'm able to then bang things out. Now it could take, when I say, bang them out, it's like you're writing maybe 1 or 2 specs a year, and these ideas take a long time. I feel like they need to be distilled. They have to be good. They can't be garbage. And if you're taking a risk like sending it to some big showrunner, you want to make sure it's solid. It's watertight, So I try to take as much time as possible in writing them, but get up and get it done, Yeah.
And so right now, First Wives Club is at BET. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And so you're in the middle of just waiting for it to go back, but you're still working on it daily.
Yes. So I've been assigned an episode, and so I'm working on that episode right now. But we were meeting and we're doing Zoom meetings and figuring out the season arc and all that kind of stuff, and what characters would be doing over the course of the season. So that was all happening via Zoom, which kind of sucked, but because in the few weeks that we were together before, DC, as you said, it was fantastic, and there was a great group of people, really great group of people. But you kind of what you're supposed to do and accomplish in your episode, but the fine points are you're on your own, and you're bringing whatever however you feel, whatever your take is, you're bringing that to bear. And yeah, this episode has been pretty fun. You know, you get to have moments where like, because all I do is like, one of my summer gigs was like worked at a video store back in the day, dude, video rental store. So, you know, there's like, I just will steal scenes and then input them into the scripts, which is fun. Like I was just watching I have a scene where like a woman catches this lady coming into her apartment, and the thought is that like this woman is this stranger is cheating, is like her husband's like her husband's having an affair with this woman. So I can't speak English right now, but I remember that scene from A Fish Called Wanda, the champagne scene when he comes in the champagne, and you know there's just all this calamity, and I was like, oh man, I can use the spirit of that scene and the structure of that scene to make this funny, and then you send it in, you send it in to the people at BT, and they're like, this is great, because you've learned, and I've always loved that aspect of it too. Is like you don't have to ever stop being curious. You can still use these components and make them and give homage to them, and then they're wonderful for a whole other audience of folks, So that's what I'm doing right now, is like breaking down this writing, busting out this episode, and should be done should be done by next week. I'm a little ahead of schedule, which is good. So
how did the Colbert Report come about?
How did that happen?
Yeah, how did that come about? I mean, that's another pretty iconic, show and a moment in time for you.
I think that was because of my buddy Frank Lesser. So Frank was like, talk about people getting gigs right out of college. So impressive, man. This guy got a gig for the Colbert Report when they first started. So he started writing for them, and he pitched an idea in the room that Steven has a black friend. So that when Steven says things about race, Steven, of course, says, it's okay, I have a black friend, I can say these things. So then I was Frank's black friend, so Frank called me and was like, what are you doing right now? And I was like, I'm not doing anything, Frank. And he's like, can you come down to the studio for this thing, for this segment? And I was like, let me think about it. So I made my way over, and it was the easiest gig I ever got. And suddenly everybody, they were watching the show. They knew who I was. It got me a manager. It got me an agent. It got me seen. It was so cool. And to watch Stephen Colbert work was like, he was, and as you know, he was in character the whole time. I was like, okay. I thought, I thought it was a character that you did, because of course it seemed strange with Canny and things like that. But for him, it was like, it was next level, which is why it worked and why it lasted so long and why he's so great and such a genius. But yeah, that was like this really, I was in my apartment, depressed, and Frank just randomly called me, and I made my way all the way. I was like, I didn't even know there was an 11th Avenue, so like, I was all the way over 54th and between 10th and 11th near the old studio, and strangely enough, that would become the studio for the nightly show. So it was, I went absolutely nowhere, Ali. Where I started is,
But I mean, it's amazing though. I mean, to me, when I think about it, I'm listening to you, because one of the things we purport at the Pit is craft, community, and career. Work on your craft, and your career will come. Work on your community, and your career will come. But if you just work on your career, you'll have neither craft nor community. And so I don't think it's random. You're friends with Frank because you were, I assume, genuinely friends. And then, you've been working on your craft, doing stand-up and improv. And all of a sudden, this moment comes where, from the ether, and boom, you're in the right place at the right time. Preparation met opportunity, and boom, you went over to the 11th Avenue, and you're on the Colbert Report. Because it's interesting because, Steven is someone I've always admired and known from Second City when I got there in 1990. He was in the touring company and whatnot. But he'll talk about, I'm going to talk to Dave Koechner soon. He owes everything he says to Dave Koechner because Dave Koechner invited him to play improv at a place called Shuba's, and that night he told Colbert, "Hey, Robert Smigel's looking for you because he wants to talk to you about being on the Dana Carvey show."
Wow.
And Stephen Colbert will say that is what began my career, the Dana Carvey show. So, again, It's all these. And when I was in Chapel Hill, building the space in 2017, I went down there in the summer of 2017, and still goes on today. I went through a lot of deep kind of situational depression, whatever. I mean, I was like, it was challenging. And then I got into this idea of like, there's no free will. I didn't choose at the time in history I was born. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose for them to move from Iran to North Carolina. So it's not my fault that I decided to go back to Chapel Hill to take over a comedy theater that was abandoned, because there's no free will, And so that allowed me to let go of, it's not your fault. It's not turning out the way you thought it would, because you shouldn't even, there's a space-time continuum where your family never left Iran. There's a space-time continuum where you were never born. There's a space-time continuum where you were born in 1868, not 1968.
Yeah, I see that.
So all of that kind of helped me let go. It helped me go. It's not about you. You were you're so infinitesimal in the big scheme of things. Just do the best you can for as long as you can, and that's it. So that's why it's always interesting to me. Like I said, someone like you I've known and admired and liked for a long time, but I've never Googled you or Wikipedia'd you or anything like that. But then when you do, you're like, whoa, look at all this, man. This is quite a body of work. And, the Colbert Report, Larry Wilmore, the shows you've been a part of. So,
you know what? Well, thank you, man. I have to say this, though, from what you said, I have to do more of that is like, remembering and kind of like really honoring people that really did give me help and help me along the way. And I don't feel like, I feel sometimes I'm like, I have to admit, I'm a person that I don't hang out, I'm kind of have gun will travel. And what's been the hardest for me to do is to create a sense of community or connection with other people in comedy. I've only done it I've only started recently. I love it now, and because like Larry I admire hugely, but I always feel like if I reach out to him again, am I bothering him? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like I've already worked for this guy once. Does he really want to keep talking to me? But I owe him so much, So that's definitely something, definitely giving me food for thought, man. Because I always feel like people often keep discovering me because I will often be like, all right, well, I've met you, I've worked with you, I'm like bingy. And then I leave, So and then I meet somebody else, and rather than create a community, geez, I used to love that show. Now this is like I should be on a couch, dude. I feel like I used to love Highway for Heaven and Benji. People that come and go out of others' lives, And I don't think I should be doing that. I think I should be really fortifying what I'm doing, and like you said, Colbert understanding exactly what got him to where he is, instead of being a dog chasing cars, which is sometimes what I'm guilty of doing,
But I think it's also being willing to put your heart out there, because, in as many people who have gotten back to me right away and said, yeah, I remember you and I'll do it, there are people who haven't gotten back to me. Now, I could have sent it to a wrong email. Maybe something else is going on in their life. But I think you have to be willing to have your heart broken. I think Malcolm McDowell, after he did Clockwork Orange with Stanley Kubrick, thought they were going to become best friends, and he didn't realize that Kubrick was the kind of guy that made you feel like you were going to become best friends, but when the movie was done, you're done, it's over. And that was hard. That was very hard for him, because he thought, well, we played ping pong and we became friends. You were like a father figure to me, and we made Clockwork Orange off the book. And he just didn't understand that wasn't Kubrick, And I think it's one of those things to understand that, you're not going to change somebody's core. Either there's someone who's like, when we're together, and we're going to be and have an amazing experience. But once it's done, we're done. Yeah. And so I think it's, you never know. You never know when you reach out. Like I said, I don't know why I do what I do, or, looking at my phone and seeing your name and being like, yes, I want to see if he's willing to talk to me, if he remembers me, But but see,
of course I remember you, man. Yeah.
But just talking to you, I think Victor Varnado. I'm like, yes, I want to talk to Victor Varnado now. How do you and Victor? How did you guys meet?
I met Victor at the UCB. So when the UCB was on, was it on 22nd Street?
Mm-hmm.
So on 22nd Street, they used to have like a, like an improv slam, and you could just go in there and do like an open mic. And I met him my junior year of college, and we were just having fun at the slam. And I was like, who is this guy? He's so cool, so obviously unique. And on top of that, like, he was kind to me, and it was like, I was very new to New York, and, like trying to get my bearing, and it was just a summer I was just there for a summer, and I remember a long story, but after we were done with the slam, we went to a diner, and then we were just buddies after that, like I remember never getting his number, but just like then running into him 1,000 times once I started to live in New York, and then we started hanging out. But like, yeah, Victor and he's always cracked me up, and because he's an artist, he's a pure artist, and I love how daring he is, and how wonderful and how vulnerable he is, and how his stand-up always comes from just a super real place, So, yeah.
When I'm talking to you, I mean, it seems like, to me, someone, looking from my perspective from the outside, you right now are in a great place. I can tell from just, the love you have for your son, Malcolm, and I can tell from his voice what a sweet, loving energy he is. You've got a job where you're able to work it during the pandemic right now, which is, a blessing to be able to have a job. You've got a roof over your head, a partner you love. But if you could wave a magic wand for the next, chapter of your life, what would be your dream situation to put yourself into for the next chunk of time? Assuming, First Wives Club keeps going, but then at some point, there's a second chapter.
Right. Well, I always say that I love to learn. So what magic wand waved, I would say, like, getting a job on an established show that would help me learn how to bring my stories in the best expression of my stories to light would be fantastic. That's just asking a little bit from the universe, nothing major, but that kind of thing is what I want. I'm getting close, and things are looking good. I just, I have a problem sometimes with, like, if it's not in my hands and I can't see it and touch it, then it's not really happening, and that I have to be patient with the universe. I have to be patient with myself and this career. And if I'm asking for a lot, then I have to have that patience,
But what do you mean established show? You want to be a writer or a performer on an established show, and which one?
I like writer. I've performed probably as much as I want to perform, and the wonderful thing is that they don't tell you is that when you perform and you switch to writing, oh my God, it's so much easier to write because you know what something's going to look like or sound like. You know what I mean? Like it's how a scene's going to go, how it's going to play out, and how people talk, and what's going to work. And you understand cadence because you've had to do it. Like you've had to. It's been drilled into you. So you're playing on both sides of the court rather than just one side. Kind of like understanding the metrics of what maybe a written line will sound like, rather than having to learn lines, hit marks, things like that. once you've done both and you're ambidextrous in that way, I feel it's a lot easier to write. You know, you understand it's easier to make blueprints, but, you know, building the brick and mortar of it is a whole nother thing, you know? So I feel like I'm ready for a writing gig that lets me climb up the ladder of like, okay, well, I was, you know, story editor on Divorce, and maybe executive in the next gig, maybe executive story editor, producer, you know, things like that, executive producer, so you're running the show. So
which established show that you mentioned would you like to be on?
Oh my gosh. I mean, let's see. Right now, I mean, I'd love, you know, like a gig on an Insecure on HBO or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or, you know, I think there's great British shows like Breeders, which would be really fun, or you know, What We Do in the Shadows, things like that. You know, 10 episodes, either like a 10 episode streamer or cable show, or like, you know, I've come pretty close to getting a job on a drama this year, and I'm up for another one right now. So I don't know. I mean, I thought that wasn't something I wanted to do until I like went out for a job for one, and then I was like, oh, I actually kind of like this, you know. And I had to learn all about writing dramas, and so I had to take a couple months, write a spec script for a drama based on what I learned about drama writing, and it was fascinating. You know, it's fascinating. And
what do you consider a drama? Which dramas are you talking about?
Well, there's dramas like I was up for this show called A Million Little Things, right? So This Is Us, A Million Little Things, things like this. These are tear-jerking dramas, you know. Sometimes, you know, it can dip into melodrama and things like that. But I wanted to see what that would be like, because often when I'm writing comedy, I'm like, you know, you have to end on a joke, obviously, but what would it be like if you didn't? You know, and that's literally what it is, and more. But there was like so much more to learn, and it felt like I was kind of like, again, there was so much I was leaving on the table and not trying, or, you know, I wanted to see more, try more. Yeah.
But so ultimately, to lead to you being a show creator, to have your own show created by Jordan Carlos, is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I see people like Kenya Barris. I think he's great. You know, I see people like Issa Rae. I think they're great. You know, just not asking for much, Ollie. Just one show, just one network television show. Yeah.
But I'll give you a little metaphor. You know, that I heard once before, that when telekinesis comes and you're able to transport something across space and time, whether you're doing a grain of sand or the pyramid, it's the same thing to the universe. So the universe doesn't really care what you're asking for. It doesn't judge or think what you think is a big deal is a big deal. So a grain of sand and a pyramid is the same to telekinesis in terms of transporting, you know, matter over space and time. So I don't think, you know, you're asking too much at all from the universe, because the universe is just like, just tell me what you want. I really don't judge it or care. You know, you still got to do the work. You still got to show up to, you know, wherever and meet that person and talk to them. You still got to write the spec script, but I will, you know, if that's what you want, sure, you know. Because to me, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I want you, please. I want to hear what you have to say, really.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if I had a magic wand and I could be an EP on a show or part of a show that you did, I mean, that 19-year-old that summer working for Fat Farm in New York City for Russell Simmons, I would greenlight 10 episodes of that in a heartbeat, you know, where I would say, and whether it's, you know, animated or in, you know, live action, to me, that seems like it would be a great, you know, 10-episode arc of a young man, 19 years old, Russell Simmons, the fashion world, nightclubs, going out, and one summer in New York, you know?
It was fantastic. It was, and, you know, I think at the time I was living above McSorley's. I made $5 a day, I think I ate like a payday a day or something like that. But you're right. It was yeah, I'd watch that show. You know? It was fantastic.
And even that, those elements that you're telling me, which really begin to become the morning pages of the show, McSorley's, a payday a day, $5, you know, getting to that show where you went out at night, you know, the people you met. And then, you know, exaggeration's the better part of storytelling, so you take some elements of what happened that summer, whether it's a love interest, whether it's a job interest, whether it's whatever, and there's your first season of 10 episodes.
Yeah. Are we making a show? What's going on right now?
I'm happy to do, look, you know, what I do is I do sight unseen handshake deals where it's like, if you felt like you got something out of this and you want to somehow say, look, Ali gets this part of it, that's fine. But, you know, I do that kind of thing where folks are, I'm like, look, I'll help come up with an idea for you. And if you like it, you put a check in the mail to whatever you think. You know, like there was this young lady I met one night. I said, what do you really want to do? And I found out she really wanted to do murder scene cleanup in Austin. So, you know, we talked to her and she, you know, ended up setting up a company, and monthly she sends a check of, you know, whatever, you know, she thinks is fair from the month of what money they made.
Oh my God.
This other young lady, we talked, and I said, well, what is it you really want to do? And I said, I really like organizing people's desks. So I said, well, let's just start a decluttering business where all you do is people's desks. And so, you know, she's got a nice little cottage industry where she just goes to people's homes and just declutters and organizes their workspace.
Well, I tell you what, if I make this show, then I will definitely send you a check, man. I will definitely send you a check. I would love to have that problem. That would be fantastic. Yeah, man.
I think you could do it. I mean, no doubt. Look, you know, you got to know how far you've come and, you know, how much potential you have. And, you know, that when you do it, you're helping a lot of other people, not just yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and those other people, I think about, I mean, immediately, you know, my family, and I also think about, you know, my parents, and, you know, I want to live up to what they gave me, you know, so, because they gave me a lot, you know, and that's just something that definitely keeps me going, spurs me on. I don't know.
I mean, it's good to have that fire and have a sense of purpose and who you're doing it for. And, you know, I think, you know, the questions to ask yourself in life are what comes easy to me but is difficult for others, and what would I do if money didn't matter? And you just keep asking yourself those questions and see how you can try to do good and do well. I used to have this bit when I did stand-up of, you know who likes movies like Stop or Your Mom Will Shoot or My Mom Will Shoot? Craft services, key grips, sound guys, drivers, because they don't care. You know, they're not judging Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. They're like, hey, I don't care. Hey, this is 21 weeks to be craft services for this. Hey,
right.
Stallone seems like a nice guy. You know. So, and I also worked in a video store. I worked at Video Schmidio and Blockbuster. And when I first got there to Video Schmidio, the movie on the top left, which was the newest release, was, I think, Terminator 2. And then little by little, you saw these movies go down that new release wall and then get popped into sci-fi. And you just thought, wow, that's the journey of a movie. You're not going to stay on the new release wall forever, you know? Tampopo is not going to be a new release forever.
Sadly.
So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I've had a blast talking to you. I mean, I you know, the most valuable thing, you know, you can give someone is your time. And I heard your, you know, lovely son in the background. I hate to have kept you from him for so long.
No, he just wants ping pong. That's all. I mean, he's ping pong all day long, you know. You see him right now. He's starting up.
Ping pong all day long. But,
you know, all day long.
I know we talked about you teaching a class at the Pit online, so, you know, let me know what I can do to help. But I connected you with Bailey, and we'll figure out the logistics of that. Because I think, you know, to know, read, to learn, write, and to master, teach. So I think, you know, if you want to really learn master something, when you start having to teach it to other people, like, all right, this is what a sketch looks like. This is what an SNL packet is asking for. Then all of a sudden you start little by little in a wax on, wax off way. You start learning things where people are like, how do you do that? It's like, well, I just taught other people how to do it, and that's how I know, like, this is what needs to happen in the scene.
Too true. I mean, and that's how I feel. And in writing, I finally found something that I genuinely feel like I'm not bullshitting, and I actually know what I'm talking about. So much of life when you're when you're in entertainment is like you fake it till you make it, and you hope that that people will believe or buy it as an actor. And this, I don't have to, and that's why I was like, wait a minute, hey, man, I think I might have an idea for that, So again, Ollie, thank you. I this should just be me. I should just send you a big thank you card, basically. This with all the things that you've done for me, sir.
Well, it's likewise. We did them together. I didn't do them for you. I did them with you. Because
for sure.
I've been to those spaces in the past couple of months many times, and they're just spaces, rectangles and squares, and I realized after a while I was like, it wasn't the space I was attached to, because I always had this feeling like eventually I'm going to have to let go of these. Eventually I'm going to have to, the leases will be up, and I was attached, but I was like, I had the epiphany of like, you're not attached to the spaces, you're attached to the people and the community and the experiences. The spaces are just like, it happens to be, this space. So we have to just make sure that's like we realize what really the attachment is, because we can be fooled into thinking. And ultimately that's what landlords want to do. They want you to become so attached to the space. They know how to raise it just enough each year for you to stay.
Right.
Which ultimately is untenable, because then what's the end game? It just keeps going up and up and up, and then other people come in and take it, and they fail. So if there's any way I can be of service to you, please let me know. But I have no doubt that in a chunk of time, you will be on a stage accepting some award for a show you created.
Well, hey, your lips to God's ears, brother. I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case. Well, dude, it was great talking to you, and we'll be in touch about the class. And thanks for just listening. You are a fantastic listener. I got to get one of those old-timey phone receivers so I can do the same. Maybe I'll become a better listener that way. And it was a pleasure, man. Really.
Likewise. Thank you, Jordan. I think you're amazing, and I thank you for your time and everything you've done for the pit and me.
I thank you for creating community and being you're one of the princes of the city, brother. Just so you know, if you heard it here first, people need to say it more. All right.
Thank you, man. I look forward to meeting your son and family someday.
Likewise. I got to meet these funny ladies. All right.
Take care. Have a good day. Buddy. Stay healthy.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Wow. Jordan Carlos. I mean, it's funny. I've known this young man for a long while, but such a good human being, funny, thoughtful. And it's nice to hear the journey. We all struggle with it as performers of like being a performer, but also wanting to be a writer. And, I too, I love writing, I love performing, and I still like acting. And, I always enjoy being on a set. But writing also provides opportunities for folks. But Jordan Carlos is someone you will definitely know and see. He will be making television and film as long as he's around, and good quality stuff. And he's a good person. And it's interesting to have spent some time listening to his journey of how he got to where he got, because, those credits have a certain pedigree to them. The Colbert Report, Larry Wilmore Show. And so it's nice to hear how something like that comes about, but opportunity meeting preparation. So thank you for listening. If you're still listening thus far, if you are, please check out thepit-nyc.com for our online classes, and hopefully someday in the real world. So I'm not sure where I'm finding it here, but I hope you're healthy, and if you're not healthy, I hope you get healthy, and once you get healthy, I hope you appreciate your health. So at this point, I will say good night, or sweet dreams, or good morning, or good afternoon. And until we meet again, and hopefully someday we'll meet in the real world, come up and introduce yourself to me. I hope you stay safe and safe travels. And until we meet again, so long.
Thanks for listening to Global Comedy Studios. Is this a bad time to talk? Stay tuned for more.